Hi, I'm Sophia Laurie, and I will be discussing today why the U.S. women's national soccer team should not be paid the same as the men's national soccer team. The rallying cry for the demand of equal pay among the women's national soccer team gets louder and louder each game, each win, and each champion title gained. It truly amazes me how many people hop on the bandwagon to fight for equal pay for the women players without even knowing the true stats, numbers, and reasoning to why they are not being paid the same as the men's team. In a CBS article, the U.S. Soccer Federation President Carlos Cordero states, the Federation paid out $34.1 million in salary and game bonuses to the women between 2010 and 2018, as opposed to $26.4 million paid to the men. In the U.S. Soccer Federation's president's statement alone, it proves that the women have received more money, even though they kind of receive it in different ways, which is why people believe the women are underpaid compared to the men. In this speech, I will persuade to you why the U.S. women's national team should not be paid the same as the U.S. men's national soccer team. The women's national team is currently, and has been for a while, fighting for equal pay compared to the men's team. They believe it's due to gender discrimination that they are not paid the same. Yet, the women's team has agreed to a guaranteed salary, unlike the men's. Numbers and stats prove they do not bring in as much money as the men's team does. And they believe that just because they are more successful, and they should be paying more. Though, the money they receive is not based on their wins, but on the revenue they are bringing in. The problem with the women's national team fighting for equal pay is that they've already chosen a guaranteed salary. Adam Reed with CNBC states, female players chose to have a guaranteed salary. U.S. Soccer therefore pays each contracted player a base salary of $100,000 per year, whereas in contrast, the men's national team has no guaranteed salary, and players are paid for the training camps they attend, games they play, plus the game bonuses. So this statement alone proves that they have just agreed to different contracts. Well, not only do they get paid their annual salary, Ash Show from the Daily Wire states they are also paid bonuses. The men's team only earns bonuses. Yet those bonuses can be larger, but that's because they don't have a guaranteed base salary. Ash Show continues to discuss in this article that the women's team also receives health insurance, a 401k, paid maternity leave, and injury protection, while the men's team does not receive any of these. And again, this is due to the idea that they signed separate contracts and different contracts, so the women's team is receiving their pay in different ways than the men's team is. The women's team and fans claim that they are victims of a sexist wage gap. But when the numbers and stats are given, that's not necessarily what is happening. Matt Walsh, in an article from the Daily Wire, states that FIFA, the international soccer organization, will give about $400 million to male players in the World Cup, while female players will make around $30 million. Reading the statement alone, it's so easy to believe that that is extremely unfair, and if it's both the World Cup and they're receiving such a big difference, it has to be a sexist wage gap that's happening. Though, this is not necessarily the case. When you look in the numbers, you will see that the men's World Cup revenue is $6 billion, while the women's World Cup revenue is $131 million. So it's not a sexist wage gap. It's that the men's tournament is bringing in more revenue than the women's tournament. The numbers from the World Cup are broken down even more to make not only an interesting point, but a fact. Walsh states that the men only make 7%. Already, the women are earning about 20%. Indeed, if we want to be fair and equal, we must conclude that women are overpaid, or else the men are underpaid. So, even though it seems like the men are making so much more than the women in the World Cup, they are actually being paid less of their revenue than the women's team is. These points just prove that there is no sexist wage gap going on, but is solely based on the money that they are making. The women's team also fights that they should be getting paid equal to the men's team due to the fact that they have proven to be more successful and are better than the men's team, so they say. Mahida Gajan in a Time newsletter states, The women allege that they're consistently paid less than the players on the men's team and discriminated against because of their gender, despite a strong performance record. So here in this photo, you can see that they're winning, and because the crowd's all happy, here's them playing, and here's their fans holding up equal pay. So this is because the women's team has alleged all these ideas that they're being paid less and has got even the fans to back them up and hold up these signs and posters during their matches. And yes, it seems through stats that the women have more wins, and it's true, they do. And they have been more successful as they just got their 4th World Cup champion title this past summer, and the men didn't even make it and qualify for their World Cup. Though just because the women's team is better against women and the men's team is not as good against men does not mean that the women's team is better than the men's team. Gudjon also states that if both teams were to lose all 20 games, they would make the same amount of money because the men receive a $5,000 bonus for losing and the women have a base salary. The women's team often fights that they are not getting paid the same when the men are losing and they're losing. But again, this is because a different contract has been agreed to by the players on the team. Here's another photo of the players after winning the World Cup this past summer. And in between the players, you can see the president of the U.S. Soccer Federation. And it seems like they're all happy, getting along, everything's great. But in reality, this photo doesn't show that just a little bit after, during a press conference, the president is trying to discuss why the women aren't unequally paid and they're getting paid what they have earned. But yet, the women players decided to start a chant over him so no one could even hear him. You can also see some of the players wearing shirts that say, "Equal pay for equal play." And those are some of the most well-known players on the women's national team. So, since the beginning of time, there has been gender discrimination in jobs, all kinds of jobs. Specifically, in salary, you see the discrimination. Though, this does not always mean that the pay difference between males and females is due to discrimination, which is seen here with the men's and women's national team. It is evident that it is due to different revenue brought in and different contracts agreed to, not because of discrimination. So thank you for listening to my speech and about why the women's national team should not be paid the same as the men's national team. Hopefully, there will be a day when women's soccer is as popular to watch as the men's, thus increasing the revenue made and overall increasing the pay of the women's national players. But in present day, that's just not the case. I urge you to not believe that the situations as such are always due to gender discrimination just from believing the headlines that are given, but to go and dig for yourself the stats, the truth, and the numbers. Thank you.